Part of the curator's role is to help the museum form a lasting material record of the American experience. We do that by looking for compelling stories in things. And on September 11th, we, like any other event in American history, sought to collect objects and stories to make a material record for American history. On a visit to New York, I met with Jules Naudet and his brother Gideon, who happened to be in New York City on September 11th, filming a documentary about a rookie New York City fireman. They were out in the street that day with Battalion Chief Joseph Pfeiffer when they heard a plane coming in very low overhead. And Jules used this camera to pan up and captured the only known footage of the first aircraft striking Tower 1 at the World Trade Center complex. Many of these objects are just ordinary things, but by the museum collecting them, they're transformed into things that help us understand history, American history. This ordinary doll was recovered at the Staten Island site known as Fresh Kills. This was an object that was sold at the top of the tower to visitors. And so in some ways, just an ordinary object that's a remarkable survivor of that day.
There's a reason why you choose an object as representative of everything. And I think all of us think at once and at the same time, first of all, not about our own stories, but about victims and rescuers. I think that's the core story, and the ragged piece of the fire department truck says everything to me. Because objects are witnesses, it actually tells you how battered it got in this process and stands for human battering at the time. It moves me beyond belief. I don't think when I think of Shanksville that I'm any different from anybody else thinking about that. That in some ways forces us onto that plane. Thinks, what would it have been like? And so a common object transformed into a relic of suffering. The seatbelt. The kind of seatbelt I would have clicked on many times, but it's the most ordinary part of that. But I'm just also moved by everything but this piece of the American flag, because United had the American flag, and maybe still does, on its airplane. And there it is in this form, with the effect of the crash.
Up until this anniversary event, many of them have never been displayed before. We've had them in our collection, but we've been processing them. There's been paperwork, preservation work that needed to be done. So it hasn't been seen in public. I think it's a remarkable story of not just what happened on September 11th, but also of the museum's collecting efforts, for the collecting curators who are on the ground attempting to get this story, being able to pick out the pieces amongst very difficult moments. It was not an easy task. And over at the end, from that end of the table, would be the crew story. So we have flight deck instruments, hot water heaters, and flight attendant materials, of which the flight attendant materials is probably the most significant in importance, because the curators wanted to show, the collecting curators, they wanted to show that the flight attendants were highly trained individuals. It was important for them. They felt like that was a story that amongst all the crashes that had not necessarily been addressed, that there might be this preconceived notion that your airline attendants were beverage dispensers. What they wanted to do is show that through their own paperwork, the notes that they had, the details that they recorded, that they were trained for all types of emergencies, for situations in the air, but perhaps not for September 11th. That was something that took all of us by surprise. But nonetheless, they wanted to document that. They wanted to say these were very qualified individuals, and So that's part of the story here, anyways, for this collections.